What are you doing?
All right, so we're going over chapter 12 today, leases, landlord, and tenants. I messed up already.
How did you mess up?
Yeah, viruses now. Okay. All right, leasing real estate. A lease from an owner of a real estate known as the leaseor to a tenant, the leasee, transfers the right to possession and use of owner's property to the tenant for a specified period of time. I don't know how to explain that though, other than the way I read it.
Don't look at me, just speak. I'll correct you along the way. And then Patty's gonna go up, and then Allie's gonna go up. She's already turning red. I didn't even set her up.
Every other paragraph we're gonna switch. There goes my first paragraph.
All right, so let's see from real estate known as the lessor. Now leasee is lessor. Okay.
Lessor.
Transfers the right of possession and the use of the owner's property to the tenant for a specified period of time.
That's a rent. It's
a rental.
It's a renter.
The question is, what are they transferring?
In this case, they're transferring what do you call it? Partial.
An interest.
The right to use what do you call it?
Which is an interest.
Yeah.
Do they have the right to the property?
No.
Like to sell the property or anything like that?
No. They only have the right to live in it for a specified amount of time.
Perfect. And what can they use? Everything?
Everything that's in the lease. Everything that's in the lease at the time of contract.
Yes.
That was probably. A transfer of property by lease is known as a demise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, transfer.
Do you know any other one that's similar to that? Demise?
Demise. Transfer of property by lease is known as a demise.
There's also something called devise. What is that?
A devise?
Devise a property. So we have demise and we have devise. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
I do not.
Ask if you remember. I didn't ask you to go back.
No, I don't remember that.
Transfer by will.
Demise is.
Devise is transfer.
Demise is lease. So it's a rental that's up.
Uh-huh.
Devise is by will. You guys got to remember that.
Can you throw me my red pen that's under all that stuff? Sorry. Right there.
You said demise is a lease, devise is what?
By will. Transfer by will. I didn't say what your instructor said.
Is a lease, and devise is transfer by will. Or by will. Okay. Next page. A lease is both a contract in that it sets forth conditions for both parties to follow, and a conveyance in that it grants a leasehold estate. So when you lease the property to the leaseor,
Why are you laughing? Just do it.
because, man, that's what happens when I get nervous. I start laughing.
Okay.
A leasing is both a contract and that it sets both conditions parties to follow, and the conveyance that it grants a leasehold estate. That's just going over the fact that when you do rent the property, you have the ability to use everything inside what was rented out to you, and
Yes.
it gives you ownership. It gives you the right to use the property
Okay.
in the way that it was written out in the contract.
Yes. Keep going.
Is there anything else to that I have to add?
Keep going.
And the New Jersey statute of frauds requires that leasees for a period of more than 3 years be in writing. A lease may be recorded if it is for 2 years or more. By recorded, do they mean, because it says there more than 3 years be in writing, but it says there may be recorded if it's 2 years or more. Would that still be the same thing as being in writing? Or recorded would be more of a verbal thing?
So, what it says here is that leases for a period of more than 3 years must be in writing. So if I have a verbal agreement with you to lease for 10 years. It's verbal.
Mm-hmm.
What they're saying is because it's more than 3 years agreement,
We have to have
it
it.
must be in writing.
Okay.
Okay? And then it says, in order to be recorded, it must have at least 2 years. So a 1-year lease does not get recorded.
Okay. In order for a broker to successfully sue for a commission on a lease transaction, the authorization must be in writing and signed by the principal. Read the contract and everything, and everyone has to sign. Both parties have to sign it.
Mm-hmm. And if you expect commission, what?
And if you expect commission, it has to be within 5 business days of being.
No, if you expect commission, it must be in writing.
If you expect commission,
That's
it
what I
must
was
be in
trying to say.
writing.
If you
Sorry.
expect commission, it must be in writing. Meaning, if you have a verbal agreement, do I owe you anything?
No.
I
Well,
do if I can prove.
Yeah, we
Right.
can prove
Right?
without
Clear and convincing evidence.
Yep.
But in this case, they're saying because it's a real estate transaction, we talked about that in contracts yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it's a real estate transaction, then it must be
in writing.
in writing, if we expect commission.
If we expect commission.
Okay.
And then we go into leasehold estates. Estates for years. There's 4 leasehold estates. Estate for years, periodic estate, or estate from period to period, tenancy at will, and the 4th one is tenancy at sufferance. And we're going to go over the 4 leases, the 4 leasehold estates now. The first one, estate for years. A leasehold estate that continues for a definite period of time with a specific termination date is an estate of years. So when you sign, when you rent out an apartment, most of the time they give you a 1-year lease. So you're expected at the end of the 1-year lease, you're either expected to leave or expected to renew for another certain amount of time, or sometimes they offer you month to month. When a definite term is specified in a written or oral lease and that period of time has expired, the tenant is required to vacate the premises. When the lease expires at the end of the year, you're expected to either give your 30 days of moving, that you're leaving the property, or if you're going to stick around, you talk to the leaseor and then you get a renewed lease. No notice is required to terminate such a lease at the end of the term. It's implied when you sign a lease that on this date you're expected to be moved out. You expect to move out.
Okay.
So there's no requirement.
Do you have any other examples for that?
Sorry.
Example other
This is
than
one her voice.
other than
Apartment is okay.
other than renting an apartment.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you keep on talking about 1 year. See, estate for years, it's the most confusing one because it says 4 years.
mhm.
But if you go on vacation to a hotel, how long do you rent the hotel for?
Couple days.
That's a getaway, that's not a vacation.
Sorry.
There too.
That's a getaway, that's not a vacation.
Usually a week at least.
A week at least, right?
Want that gun over here?
Punta Cana over there, right?
Let's
But-
go.
So the fact that there's a check-in and a check-out date is what makes it an estate for years. Okay?
Okay.
The fact that there's a check-in, if you want to write it down, check-in and check-out date, that's what makes it an estate for years. So if you're there for 1 week, that's an estate for years.
That's it for years.
Okay? If you have a 1-year lease, it says, hey, a year from now, you got to get out. So it's implied that it ends on that date. Okay?
Gotcha. An estate for years need not necessarily last for years or even for 1 year, which our great student over here just explained to us. That it doesn't have to be necessarily a year. It can be a week, it can be a day or two.
The important factor is
Important.
the check-in, check-out.
There's a beginning and there's an end.
Yes.
Oh, and then if you read, if you look at table 12.1, it lets you know a stay for years, it's for a definite period of time. Periodic estates, sometimes called estates from period to period, are created when the landlord and tenant enter an agreement that continues for an indefinite length of time without a specific expiration date Rent, however, is payable at definitive intervals. What is this? A month-to-month lease? Okay.
Periodic, certain intervals. There's no ending. As long as you pay every 30 days, or if it's a week to week, every week, or if it's whatever it
Every
is,
2 months, 6 months, or
whatever it is, there's no end date. So it's periodic.
Periodic. When no new lease agreement has been made, the landlord may either evict the tenant or accept the holdover tenancy. Since you're paying from month to month, after the month is completed, or if you're going by week, after you're completed, you're supposed to speak to the landlord and try to see if you can renew it.
Mm-mm.
No?
Nope.
You just continue paying each
Because it's month to month, you keep on going. If it was the other one,
Uh-huh.
there's an end date.
and they
That one you have to renew. This one, because it's a month to month or week to
You just
week or
continue
year to
paying?
year, as long as you pay, that's it. What you're required to do is if you want to leave,
have
you need to
give
give a notice.
Okay.
See, in the state for years, no notice is required because we already assumed check in, check out.
Mm-hmm.
Here is you're on the month to month, so you pay. And then if the landlord gives you a 30-day notice, you gotta leave.
It's over.
If you give the landlord a 30-day notice,
It's over.
you gotta leave.
It's like a verbal, contract. It's like,
It could be in writing. Month to month could be in writing.
yeah,
You giving
Yeah.
notice could be it actually should be in writing.
because we didn't do any contracts, just was verbal.
It could be verbal. I'm just saying. I don't think verbal
As long
is
as
the
you
best
have
option,
witnesses.
especially for
Yeah.
you. And
Well,
now you're suffering with that for not having it in writing.
A New Jersey tenant who remains in possession of leased premises after giving notice of intention to quit the premises may be held liable for double rent.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't give the landlord a notice, he can
Don't worry,
charge
I
you
can speed up.
double the rent. The subsequent acceptance of rent by the landlord creates a tenancy from month to month, which is just going over what we talked about, where as long as you continue paying, you're allowed to stay there, unless you give a written or verbal notice to the landlord.
So as long as you continue to pay and they're continuing to accept, hey, month to month, keeps on going.
Everything's good. To terminate a periodic estate, either the landlord or the tenant must give proper notice. Landlord or the renter must give proper notice. Written or oral. Is tenancy at will, an estate that gives the tenant the right to possess with the consent of the landlord for an indefinite period is a tenancy at will. I'm reading ahead so I can try to give you an example.
I put you on the spot, I know.
It's all right. Landlord gives the tenant the option. An example in the book is at the end of the lease period, a landlord informs the tenant that in a few months, the city is going to demolish the apartment building to make way for an expressway. So the landlord gives the tenant the option of occupying the premises until the demolition begins. If the tenant agrees to stay, a tenancy at will is created. So from reading from that, as long as you're willing to stay there because you're given notice that something's going to happen to the apartment. For example, they're selling the property, so you're told that we're selling the property, and since you've been staying from month to month, the new owners of the property might not want you to stay might not want you to continue renting from them. So they're letting you know, hey, you can stay here until the day that we sell the property. If you choose to leave, if you choose to stay, that's on you. Is that about right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Is that will?
It's at will. So it's at will to stay.
Okay.
It's not the-
Now switch the gears, go to the next one.
All right. So the fourth leasehold estate is tenancy at sufferance. Tenancy at sufferance arises when the tenant who lawfully came into possession of real property continues after his or her rights have expired to hold the possession of the premises. Without the consent of the landlord, a tenant at sufferance can be evicted at any time. It's basically when the landlord wants you out and you continue staying and you're causing him to suffer, which is why the tenancy at suffer, he's suffering because you're staying there as a tenant and he doesn't want you there anymore.
Therefore, they're suffering.
They're suffering.
Because they're suffering.
Because they're suffering.
They're so suffering.
Okay.
But yes, that's right.
I mean, it's plain simple. That one was the simplest one probably out of all of them because it's right inside of tenants and sufferance.
Correct. So tenancy at will is where I allow you to stay, right?
At will.
Tenancy at sufferance, you gotta get out, but you're still there.
You stick around.
So the landlord is suffering. Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the suffering because now they gotta start to beat on you. Say, still here? What day are you gonna leave?
Yep.
They gotta knock your door every day. They gotta.
Standard lease provisions. The essentials of a valid lease include the following. Capacity to contract. The parties must be sane adults. That's when we were talking about in the previous chapter when we were talking about competent parties
Ooh, there you go.
and competent parties, which would be 18 and over unless you get married earlier.
Yes.
And
There's something else about competent parties. They have to be completely insane.
a
right?
sound of mind.
Oh, sound mind.
Sound of mind. It cannot be insane.
So you cannot be.
You
Anthony.
cannot be insane. You have to know what you're doing.
Cannot be Anthony.
The next bullet point, a demising clause, the lessor to let the lessee to take the premises. We just went over that. The demising clause is to
Transfer.
is the lease. Is the lease is a transfer of property via a contract?
Yeah, that's what the
For a certain
demising
amount of
clause
time?
is. For leases. It's like the transfer for leases. Yeah.
Okay.
If it was a will, it would be a
Devise.
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 There you go. Not Levi's, devise.
I wasn't wearing Levi's today. I was about to. A description of the premises. A description of the leased premises should be clearly stated if the lease covers land, and legal description of the real estate should be used. If, on the other hand, the lease is for a part of the building, such as an office or an apartment, the space itself should be clearly and carefully described. If supplemental space to be included, the lease should clearly identify. So the lease should identify. The lease should let the tenant know exactly what they're getting at the time of them signing the contract. If they're going to get an office, they're going to get just 4 bedrooms and a bathroom, or if they have access to maybe the basement to do some type of laundry. They should be known ahead. They should be let know ahead of time in the contract, so that everyone knows what they're entitled to.
Correct.
Clear statement of term, duration of the lease must be provided. When you sign the lease, they should let you know. Not every single lease will let you know that there will be 1 year, 6 months. It could be. It all depends on what you come in. What you agree upon with the leaseor. The rent and how it is to be paid must be specified. Nowadays, you can do transfers by Quickzelly, but more than likely, most landlords prefer if you pay check. But it should be explained in the contract whether it should be also you should pay within 5 days or 10 days, but the average would be 5 days of the first of the month. The lease must be in writing if for a term of more than 3 years. And we went over that already at the beginning. Signatures. A lease should be signed by both parties. That's self-explanatory. When the contract's given to you, you should read the contract, and then if you agree, you should sign it, and then the landlord should also sign it so that both of you guys are in acceptance of the agreement contract. And we're going to go on to the next one. Anyone got any questions?
Ooh.
The next bullet, we're going to move on to use of premises. A lessor may restrict a lessee's use of premises through provisions included in the lease. If most landlords, for example, maybe they won't allow you to use their driveway, and you have to park on the street. They have to specify it. Another example would be using the basement for storage. Some landlords will allow you to that. Some landlords won't allow you to that. They have to make sure they have to put that in the contract, so you know when you're signing it that you can use those specific things. was gonna pick on you for a second there and ask you to give me an example.
Yeah.
The term of lease. The period for which the lease runs should be set out precisely. In a contract, you should let us know, it should be, the landlord should let the tenant know how long they should be allowed to stay, and or the tenant have to agree to the period of time they're gonna stay as well. New Jersey requirements. All offers, contracts, or leases prepared by licensees must indicate the business relationship the firm has with respect to parties named in the document. Acknowledgement that the CIS was received by the buyers, tenants, and sellers, landlords prior to the first showing of the property.
All right, so what was the last thing you read?
He read New Jersey requirements.
Yeah, right?
Mhm.
So you guys already know that.
Yes.
Yesterday, we also talked in contracts about having something in top of the contract that says, this is a legally binding lease and it will become final within
3 business days.
3 business days. So every contract and every lease is final in
3 business days.
3 business days. There you go.
3
3, there you go.
business, not
During those 3 business days, you have the right to attorney review, which we discussed yesterday, so I'm just going to move forward.
correct.
Then you have a copy of a lease. Just move forward. Let's go over to page.
You don't have to read this attorney.
Because we did it yesterday. It's attorney review.
Okay,
Yeah.
Same thing.
Only because it's the same thing as yesterday.
all right.
During the 3 business days, we enter into an agreement, me and you.
Mhm.
I'm the landlord, you're the tenant.
Okay.
Within 3 business days, you can bring that lease to your attorney. I'll bring that lease to my attorney. Okay? They start talking to each other about the problems with the lease or changes in the lease. Okay? But those conversations must start within the 3 business days. Okay? That's all it is. So it gives you an opportunity to correct.
But you need to have a lawyer in order to do lease?
No,
It's not
you don't need to, but you have the right to within
Okay.
3 business days. That's what it is. I didn't want to say it, but yeah. All right, secure deposits. Everybody knows what a secure deposit is for, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What is a secure deposit for?
It's, well, in this case, it would be for damages.
What kind of damages?
Any damages that you do in property that you're leasing.
Such as physical damages only?
No. Well, yeah, physical.
That's it?
If you
Any kind of
if you
damages.
stay any longer, like tenants sufferance.
For instance, you're breaking the contract, so you lose the deposit, for
Mhm.
instance.
Yeah.
Or failure to pay rent.
Yep.
So it says right there, the security guarantees payment of rent and safeguards against the tenant's destruction of the premises. Now, residential landlords, you gotta know this for state exam, and you gotta know this in real life. Residential landlords cannot charge any more than 1.5 months rent figure as a
Really?
security deposit.
How come some
Have you seen ads that say 2 and
Yes.
sometimes 3 months?
Yes.
it's illegal?
Illegal.
No, I have proof.
Good news is that they don't take a real estate course, so they don't know. The bad news, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
But what do you know, like, what 1 month and a half? Why just 1 month?
I know you want 1 month, but
No, I know, but
they can
why
go up to a month and a half. No, because in New York, for instance, they can charge whatever. I think it's up to 6 months or whatever. If it's commercial, it says right there, we can charge whatever we want as security. If you're there for 1 year, I can charge you 1 year security.
Why?
Mhm.
What is the reason?
It's what I want. Just in case you screw up
Security.
and then destroy the property, I want to make sure I'm safeguarded against that. The limits that they're putting on residential is to protect you as a tenant.
Mhm.
For the lender not charging you too much, and then at the end coming up with an excuse that you're not getting the deposit back. Does that make sense?
It hasn't always been 1.5. Like the most popular hasn't always been 1.5, or has it always been 1.5?
The popular vote or the electoral vote? Which one?
No, 1.5.
They always charging them like.
The average for landlords
This is by law.
requesting security deposit.
Most landlords charge either 1 month or a month and a half.
Okay.
Okay? They started stretching, especially with those that came from New York. They come here and put advertisements, and they charge 2 and 3 months security deposit.
I've seen
They're
it.
from New York.
Mm-hmm.
So they get here and they think they can do whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by law, what we're talking about is law. State law, you cannot charge any more than 1.5 month rental figure. So if it's $1,000 a month, the max you can charge is $1,500 as a security deposit.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Mhm.
Other states, different laws. So this is Jersey.
Where's Josie?
Now, Jersey.
Josie.
Did you give a security deposit in your rental?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know where the money is?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope.
Great. Do you know where the money is?
Wow.
Or you don't rent? So, Peter, you know where yours is? You know exactly where it is. You've been there. You looked at it.
I know the account number and I
You got
receive-
everything.
Every year I receive
Statement.
the few cents to put on my tax.
You get the cents or you get a statement.
The state.
Okay.
Interesting.
So here's the thing. The tenant is to be notified where the money has been placed in a special interest-bearing account used only for secure deposits. You have to think about this. I'm the landlord, you're the tenant. I'm holding your money hostage. When we hold somebody hostage, we expect you to do something in order to get the money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding your money hostage, meaning if you behave, if you don't destroy or damage the apartment, I'm going to give you the money back when you leave. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But because I'm holding hostage, you got to know where the money is. It's your money, not my money. Good?
Yes.
Not only that, it says interest-bearing account, because again, I'm using your money as leverage. So you must give money, have returns on it, right? The whole 12 or 13 cents you're going to get, but it's still yours, because I'm using your money for a year or 2 years or whatever, okay? So you must know where it is. The tenant is entitled to all of the interest, the 12 cents, as a credit towards the rent on the anniversary of the lease. So instead of $1,000, you're paying $999 and 86 or 87 cents. If the property is sold, but by the way, who does the deposit belong to? Security deposit?
To the 10.
To the tenant. So if the property is sold, there's a new owner.
Mm-hmm.
Who does the security deposit belong to?
The
The new
10.
owner.
The tenant.
The tenant.
So
The money always belongs to the tenant. The security deposit is always to the
Yeah,
tenant.
but if you don't have a contract, it was verbal. And
Doesn't matter, it's still
yes,
yours.
if it's just, if the landlord doesn't want to give the security back.
You go to court. All right. If the landlord does not give you the money back right after the 30 days, what happens? So he has to give you back double the security.
All right.
So $1,500 I'm supposed to return to you, but I don't do within the specified period of time, or I violated the conditions by not doing the itemized deductions. You can actually sue me for double the security deposit.
I don't know that.
So this works.
Yeah, but the same way he said earlier, right? Anthony was here. He said earlier that if a tenant says, "Hey, I'm going to leave in 30 days," and then you don't, you're subjected to double the rent. You're still there, so you got to pay double the rent. The landlord, if he doesn't return the deposit, got to pay double. So it goes both ways. Okay.
All right.
Secretary.
Now, the tenant, and this you guys hear a lot because almost half of Newark does this or more. The tenant is not entitled, please underline, not entitled to apply the deposit to last month's rent.
Mm.
How many of them say, hey, I'm just going to live the last month off of the security deposit?
Yep.
What?
It's a lot.
Right?
All the time.
See, you're not entitled to it. And if you're a landlord, think about it. If you're a landlord, what is a security deposit for?
For damages.
Damage.
For damages. So if somebody lives out their security deposit and when they leave, the whole apartment is destroyed,
That's it.
how are you going to fix the apartment?
You can't.
Your own
You
money,
gotta- out of your
technically.
pocket.
Out of
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah.
You got it?
Mhm.
Last thing, it says, nor can the landlord keep the deposit if the only damage to the apartment can be construed as normal wear and tear. We have carpet, right? Right here, wall-to-wall carpet.
Yes.
If it's faded by the door, right? Do you think, as a landlord, I'm entitled to say, hey, we're going to replace the whole thing?
No. That's where
Why not? Because that's wear and tear.
As you walk in, walk out of the apartment.
That's it. I cannot charge you for that. But if you have an animal, a dog, a cat, whatever, and it's ripped, can I?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Walls. I gave you off-white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you painted one wall pink, another wall black. Is that normal?
No.
Definitely not, right?
Mm-mm.
So it's not normal at all. The landlord is now entitled to charge for painting. But if I gave it to you off-white and there's smudges on the wall, normal wear and tear. I cannot charge you for painting. You got it?
Mhm.
Cool.
Actually, the walls of the mills for any.
That's not normal because the holes did not get there by themselves. One thing is the rubbing, the furniture, and all that stuff is different. But holes,
So I was putting the furniture, the nail just stuck into there. I just leave it there.
late payments. What are late payments for? What are late payments for?
When you don't pay your rent on time?
When you don't pay the rent on time.
I was gonna say child support. Sorry, I see this all the time on my job.
Do you guys remember how many days you got to pay?
You only get the first of the month, but then
Okay.
unless
Right hand
it's in
side
a
on
contract.
top. The rent is due and payable at the beginning of the month. Now, landlords may charge a penalty for late payment. Except, please highlight, underline, put stars. Anthony, you can read.
Except the senior citizens receiving Social Security, old age, railroad retirement pensions, or any other government pension must be given a 5-day grace period free of late charges.
Nice, right? Put stars, put arrows, put bubbles. You got to remember that.
That's a question on top.
All right, legal principles of a lease. We already went over this. If the lease, it's somewhere in the middle there, it says New Jersey. If a lease is more than 2 years, you can record it if you want, right? Why do we record anything, by the way?
Have evidence.
To have some type of evidence. It says here, recording of long-term lease places the world on notice. So lets the world know, hey, I'm here. You know, why back in the day they put their flags?
So let them know that we were here.
Correct. So recording something, so we don't put flags anymore, right? But recording something is to let the world know, hey, I'm here and I have certain rights. Okay? You cannot just kick me out.
I would have the dopest flag.
Record order. We're not fighting. Possession of the lease premises, it says if you're rented, you should be entitled to occupy and take possession, right? Simple. Improvements. Can you improve the property?
No.
You cannot make changes to the
Not
property?
unless you
I
let
will.
the landlord know, and he has to approve the improvements.
Approve the improvements.
Approve the
You
improvements.
can, but you have to ask the permission of the landlord.
To approve the improvements.
Yes. But if you do, it's
There's a chance of
your
it
own,
staying.
and
Wait. If you do what?
if you do, and when you leave the apartment and the landlord asks you to remove or change, to be the same, you have to do it. Otherwise,
Yes.
they're gonna charge
You lose the deposits, or anything that you improved actually
Stay.
becomes the landlord's.
Yep.
Must stay.
Yes.
So if you want to remove and you never have permission, you might have to leave it there. So it says right here, so perfect. It says right here, tenant may make improvements with the landlord's permission, but any such alterations generally become the property of the landlord. Of course, unless we agree to something different.
AKA,
It is customary to provide that such trade fixtures may be removed by the tenant before a lease expires, provided that the tenant restores the premises to the same condition as when he or she took possession. So you're able to take your stuff out. Again, we're talking about trade fixtures, so this is a business. You can take your stuff out before the lease expires. We spoke about this a couple days ago. But after the lease expires, it becomes the landlord. Got it? And you have to restore it to the original condition. Maintenance of premises. It says every residential lease, oral or written, is considered to contain an implied warranty of habitability. Before anything else, yesterday we talked about express and implied contracts. What's the difference?
express and implied.
Express means you're telling someone to do something.
Right.
Implied means you're just
You should
letting
know.
them know.
You should know.
If you're letting them know, then you're telling them.
Well, you're telling them, there you go.
Okay, but that's expressed.
Well,
It's implied that you have to pay rent on the first of the month.
express means
It's
you're
implied? No,
demanding.
that was expressed.
Ugh.
Like you're demanding.
That's expressed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Implied is
And
you
if-
should know already.
Implied you should know. It's assumed. It's assumed that you know.
Okay. I knew
It's
the
based on your
difference.
actions. Expressed is me letting you know or telling you. It's the same thing. Letting you know or telling you is the same thing. It's expressed. I'm saying you got to do 75 hours.
Right.
What was implied is that for you to pass, you have to study or be here. Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's implied. It's based on assumptions.
You,
And
you,
actions.
you said it before, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it was.
So implied, it's assumed. So if you're saying implied warranty of habitability, that means it is assumed that the property is habitable and it will maintain habitable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's not written, the landlord says it's habitable. No, it's implied. So the landlord guarantees that the leased property is fit for human habitation and that the tenant is not subjected to any conditions that could endanger life, health, or safety. So the landlord is required to maintain the dwelling units in a habitable condition and make any necessary repairs. Go to the next page. To common elements, such as hallways, stairs, or elevators. And the tenant does not have to make any repairs unless otherwise provided in the lease, but must return the premises in the same condition they were received. We talked about this before, right? With allowances for wear and tear occasioned by ordinary use. Again, we just spoke about this. Now, the landlord must make necessary repairs within a reasonable amount of time, or after notification. So, what do you think reasonable time after notification is?
A couple days.
Couple days? Okay.
Okay.
A week, seven
Depending
days,
on- A
7
week?
calendar days.
A week? Okay.
Yeah.
Allie? How many days? Or time? How much time do you think the landlord should have to make necessary repairs?
I don't know.
You know,
As soon as possible.
as soon as possible. 2 days? A week?
Yeah, because
We're gonna go with depends. Not the ones you wear, but
Yeah.
depends. Because what we're saying here is, you're in the middle of winter, there's no heat. You wanna wait a couple days or 7 days? You'll be a popsicle. All right? You'll be in the next Disney movie.
Frozen.
3.
Okay, makes sense.
You got it?
Yeah.
So the answer is depends on the condition and as soon as possible usually. Because if it's heat, and if you have children, even worse.
Oh,
You're not gonna even wait a few hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
But some landlords unfortunately do. So in green we have,
condition.
if a landlord fails to make repairs, New Jersey does recognize the tenant's right to
Repair,
repair and deduct.
sir.
New Jersey allows you to fix the problem and deduct from the rent.
Been there, done that.
And at this point, you don't use the soap. You hire somebody professional, which is your cousin, who would just use soap, but they bill you for the whole price, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the landlord will do to you anyway.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right?
No.
Come on. And then she's like, yeah,
Depends.
that's exactly what I
Depends.
Depends.
Depends on the conditions.
Depends if I'm the landlord or the.
Or, yeah.
Anyway. So what we're saying here is that the tenant may withhold rent until repairs have been made, or if repairs are vital, and the landlord does not make them within a reasonable amount of time, have the repairs done and deduct their costs from the rent. What do you think is something that's vital? Like, it has to fix or you're not paying.
Water.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Water, for instance.
Running
If there's no
water.
water, no running water, then that's an essential. You need it, right?
Mhm.
Got to be fixed. Heat, you need it. Got to be fixed. Anything else?
Gas, electric.
Is that an essential?
Yeah, you need electricity.
You do.
I mean,
You
if
You never
you
had a
have-
candlelight dinner?
You get used to it.
But what if a house uses
Yes.
electrical
Absolutely.
heaters instead of gas?
Absolutely. So you need it, right? Anything that's essential. What if there's contamination of some kind?
They should.
Like if there's any
Bed
Lead.
bugs.
bed bugs.
Oh. Is that
Do
lead?
they have to?
mold.
Is that lead?
Mold too. Lead too.
Yeah.
As soon as they know, they should repair, right?
Alright.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that could endanger life, health, or safety. All right? Now, it says where the landlord furnishes heat. Between October 1st and May 1st, all rooms must be heated to at least 68 degrees from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and to at least 65
Really?
degrees at night.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell my brother-in-law that one.
Yep. Most of my students go like, oh, that's cold.
Not
I'm
really.
like, it's 65 degrees outside right now. Go.
My house is 68.
Tell me to walk around your house at 65. Right?
I keep my house 60.
Mine's 68.
That's it.
When my little one goes, I'm cold. Man,
Put a sweater
put
on.
on a sweater.
That's what I say. You know?
Put on a sweater, throw on a couple pairs of pants.
There's something called
I don't
pajamas,
know.
you know? Or significant others. Assignment or subleasing. Hey, we go to the old ways. A little friction, doesn't it?
Body heat, body heat.
Body heat. All right. Assignment and subleasing. Do you guys remember assignments?
Yes.
Yes.
That's one of the questions I have for you at the end.
Okay. So can you tell me what an assignment is?
Assignment is when you basically switch a lease to someone else
Okay, you transfer the lease to
because
somebody else.
you
Okay.
are backing out of something.
You're backing out, for instance. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't.
So you
can't,
concur?
You can't meet the contract, so.
For instance. Maybe you can meet the contract, you just don't want to.
Yeah.
But you
If
have
I
to,
agree,
but you have to be able to, if the lessor agrees, then
that's or
the lessor agrees, then you have to find somebody who can be able to fulfill the contract.
Mhm. Great. So that's an assignment.
Mhm.
What about subleasing?
You're giving the lease to someone else, basically, like,
That's an assignment.
okay.
Subleasing, when the next you rent out, you can sublease a room inside your apartment.
Mhm. You're taking a portion of the lease or the space. That's subleasing. When it's the whole thing, that's an assignment.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm.
But if I lease a desk here, it's subleasing because I'm subleasing a space, not the whole thing.
Okay.
You got it?
Yep.
Yes.
What's the biggest difference between these two?
You said subleasing is a portion of the.
What's the biggest difference between these two?
Responsibility.
Liability.
Mm.
Got it?
So it's
Liability. Because in an assignment,
You're responsible.
you have primary and secondary liability.
Yep.
The assignor has secondary liability. That's the last thing there, last paragraph. The assignor has secondary liability, and the assignee, the person that received the property, has primary liability, right?
Yep.
What about on the sublease? Is there any liability to any of the parties? Or to which one?
Whoever's subleasing, the sublease,
Sorry. Lessor.
lessor, sublessor.
Yes. So if I rent this space, I'm taking responsibility for the whole space.
Mm-hmm.
If I sublease to any of you guys one of the desks, for instance, right? And I cannot go to my landlord and say, well, John, I'm sorry, but my tenant is not paying. What do you think he's going to say?
Not my problem.
Not my monkey. Not my monkey, because I rented it to you, not to your people.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in an assignment, both of us have liability. In a sublease, you cannot say, and this happened to me a lot with the, that you were talking about having Brazilian tenants.
Mhm.
I'm not saying being Brazilian, it's just that particular group that I was just talking about earlier. That's what happened. There were like 8 people living there, and all of them failed to pay. And the one that was responsible went to Florida,
Convenient, right?
conveniently.
Mm.
$20,000 later, I finally get a good tenant, which happens to be Brazilian too. But he was actually very good tenant.
What do you mean 20,000 per year?
The down payments of trying to go after, trying to evict all those people,
Mm-hmm.
because they made agreements with the one I
How
rented
do you
to.
let 8 people live in the apartment?
I did not know that
How
there was
do
8
you know?
people.
They have family come and they're just staying for a few days and then
No,
they turn
there's
out to
people.
live.
No, there's people constantly in and out. I didn't know.
And then you have the ones that sold the apartment before they leave.
Yeah,
Actually, a lot of people,
That's what
they
I
do
That sold the
this.
apartment.
yeah, it's not even theirs.
They rent
That's what happened to me. The guy literally assigned the lease without my permission.
Wow.
Luckily, the person that got it from him
That's a
was
sign
very
of
good.
lease. I did have a story that the guy sell the apartment.
He sold the apartment.
He sold the apartment for $30,000 to somebody. And then when the landlord come, because I was working for that guy, for the landlord, when he come to collect the rent, the guy, it's mine. Why are you going to pay rent? It was a problem for the guy taking, he didn't pay nothing. He actually ended up to take him out from there, but it was a great problem. The guy,
Wow.
the paperwork, of course, fake paperwork, but you have everything
That's a
done.
smart way. That's a smart way to go around it.
He
Get the
sold,
money up front.
sell the apartment.
Hey, there's a lot of people that do that.
Condominium at that
He
point.
sold the apartment.
There's a lot of people do that even with cars. They sell the car 3 or 4 times. They sell
Yeah.
houses 3 or 4 times.
That's crazy.
I know people that putting out people and they charge like $300 for a bed.
All the rooms.
For the bed,
Yeah.
not for the
Bed.
room, for the
It's
bed.
not a room, it's a bed. So you
Wow.
actually
You're
take over the
subleasing a
3 or
bed.
4
So
people.
that's why
Are they
yes,
Mexican?
Is it
No,
bunk- is it
it's
bunk
the
beds?
Brazilians.
Brazilians, okay.
Yeah,
So, all
that
right.
was in
And you have
Canada.
the night shift to the day shift.
No, because we were just talking.
$600 for the bed.
Let me make this clear because we're on camera. This is not discrimination. It's just that because I was just talking to them about a friend of mine that's Mexican, where he used to live. They It just happens to be in the house they used to live, right? Where they used to live, one of the rooms, like his room had bunk beds, but one of the rooms
I knew it.
had day shifts and night shifts. And there was 8 beds. Between the bunk beds, there was 8 beds. So there was like 8 people coming during the day to sleep and 8 people coming at night to sleep. The day shift, the night shift.
Travels.
It was probably like $300 a pop. Imagine.
Yeah.
And
It's not a bad deal.
some of them charge like on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I
A
know
lot of
somebody that makes a lot of money doing it.
We know somebody that was doing that too, right?
Airbnb.
No.
No,
No,
but
that's legal.
that's the legal
That's
way.
legal way.
Airbnb is the legal way. What we're
And
talking
even
about-
some cities say it's not. So you got to be careful with Airbnb. You got to know the rules also of the town. Termination of lease. It says a written lease for a definite period of time expires at the end of that time period. No separate notice is required to terminate the lease when it expires. What does this mean?
Expires.
It expires. Check in, check out. We're talking about definite period. What kind of estate is that?
Wait, repeat?
Ha. So if this was a question,
Tenancy and no.
I said estate. You're going for tenancy.
That's why I asked you, repeat?
There's no separate notice required, so there's a check-in, there's a check-out date. What kind of estate is this? It says definite period.
State of years. No,
It's like it's the
definite date.
yeah, it's the 4th time you say it wrong. By the way,
Sorry.
it's 4 years, not of years.
State 4 years.
And you went to read it.
That's what I said. State of 4 years.
You're dyslexic?
No, I said state 4 years.
It said of.
Did I? Oh, sorry.
So 4 times.
State 4 years.
See how sitting down there, I was on my phone, chillaxing, letting you do your thing. The state of years. The state of years.
4 years.
State of years. I was. So we already said termination of lease. If it's a definite period of time or a state of years, right?
4 years.
4 years or 5 years?
4.
10 years?
O-R.
4.
4.
If it's in a state 4 years, it's called a definite period of time, right? So therefore, check in, check out. That means we have a notice up front before we sign. We have a notice to leave, just like a hotel, a resort, right? You have to leave, I know. Now it says, in the next paragraph, it says, when the conditions of a lease are breached or broken, a landlord may terminate the lease and evict the tenant. This action must be handled through a court proceeding according to state law. Put stars next to that. Got to go through court. You cannot just kick somebody out. So it says the landlord who wishes to be rid of a tenant is not allowed to use threats of violence, change locks, discontinue essential services like water or heat, or seize the tenant's possessions unless the landlord's Portuguese.
Or Brazilian.
Or Brazil, I mean, we're all ruthless anyway.
Yeah.
Have you dealt, no, you guys definitely have dealt with the Portuguese landlords. I mean,
Yeah.
all others probably the same. But Portuguese landlords, especially the older generation, it's like, this is my house, I can do whatever I want, I'm above the law. Let them come at me, right? I know some people that are like that. So, why are you guys looking at Peter?
Because
Yeah, you look at him.
It was not, you know.
You
thought it was
just follow
Moroccan.
your eyes.
They're coming.
Anyway,
I can hear him coming.
so, but they can't do that. What we're saying here is that court order only. There's a proceeding for that.
Yep.
In fact, if you mess with their property, pick up their stuff from their house, you invaded their personal space, even though they're not paying you. They're still in possession of the premises. And possession is 9/10 of the law. So as long as you're in possession, you have rights. So the moment I grab your stuff and I put outside, I violated a bunch of your rights. I can actually get sued as a landlord. You got it?
Yep.
So careful with that.
Extra stars. Extra money signs.
Question somewhere? No.
No.
Okay. Next paragraph, it says it's possible for parties to a lease to agree to cancel the lease. The tenant may offer to surrender the lease, and acceptance by the landlord results in termination. A tenant who abandons leased property remains liable for the terms of the lease, including rent. What we're saying is, you have a 1-year lease, and 6 months later you decide to book it, get out, right? You still got 6 months left. What do you think the landlord's going to do?
charge you
Charge
6 months.
rent.
Charge you?
Yeah.
By law, please highlight with stars, bubbles, whatever you want. By law, the landlord is required to try to mitigate the damages by renting the property as soon as possible to another tenant. So my job, you're the one that left, you're the one that breached, but my job is to find somebody else to rent first. If it takes 2 months to rent, then I can sue you for 2 months. If the tenant can only be found who will pay lower rent, the original tenant will be liable for the difference. So if I took 2 months to rent, the $1,500 rent, right? But I'm renting now at $1,400 because that's the only thing I could find. You are now liable for $3,000 plus another 4 months at $100, which is the difference, right? So I can sue you for $3,400. Who's going to sue for $3,400?
No.
Most landlords will not do anything because even an attorney will tell you
It's gonna cost
It
more.
costs more.
it's going to cost so much and it's going to take so long you might not even see the money.
Yeah.
So our job as landlords is to try to rent it as quick as possible, stay quiet, just move on.
Take
It
the
sucks,
loss.
right? Take the loss.
Mhm.
An attorney will say, hey, if it's $10,000 or more, then it's a different story.
Yeah.
All right. The advance notice to be given by the landlord or tenant who wants to end the relationships varies according to the type of leasehold. If it's in a state of years,
4 years.
4 years, requires no advance notice of termination by the landlord or tenant. It automatically ends at the end of the stated term. You guys already know this.
Check it out.
Next one is periodic estates. If you see it, it says estate from year to year, you got to give 3 months notice. Month to month, you got to give 1 month's notice. Week to week is a 1 week notice. All the way at the bottom it says, unless a lease states otherwise, it survives the sale. What does that mean? It means that if the house is sold and I still have 3 months left on my lease, the new landlord, the new owner, cannot change the terms of the lease, cannot kick me out, cannot do anything. He or she has to honor
In 3 months.
my lease for those remaining months. Okay?
Until it's terminated.
Honor.
Yes. Next page says truth in renting. Who's ever heard of truth in renting before? Great. Oh, don't say that. Great. So it says New Jersey Department of Community Affairs publishes an annual updated statement on the rights and duties of residential landlords and tenants. So every year there's a new
Right.
or updated pamphlet, which you can print online, by the way. And included is information on eviction procedures, building maintenance requirements, and rent and lease provisions. So this truth in renting pamphlet, right, includes everything we just talked about. How can you evict? We got to go to court. What can you evict for? We're going to talk about causes in a second. Does that make sense? So everything is written there. So it's the rights that the landlord has, the rights that the tenant has. How many landlords have this?
None.
None.
Well, some do,
Oh,
especially if it's property managers. If they have property managers, usually
they have
They
it.
have.
they have this. It actually says, and you got to know this and put a star, landlords must give a copy to every tenant and post a copy on the property. How many do? Barely any.
The limiter
I
amount.
never even heard of it.
That's awesome. Have you heard of ADA? Not DEA, that's value.
I was like the American Dental Association.
It's actually dentistry. But, okay. But that was good, though. That was good. That was good. So Americans with Disability Act.
Americans with Disabilities?
Americans with, it's on the right-hand side on top. Americans with Disability Act.
And there's like 2-3 questions on this.
Really?
Yeah, on mine specifically.
Okay. And I'll give you the 3 answers right now. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the Americans with Disability Act has had a significant impact on responsibilities of property manager, both in building amenities and in employment issues. Next, skip a paragraph. It says, property managers must also be familiar with Title III of the ADA, which, answer, prohibits discrimination in commercial properties. What is the ADA? Prohibits discrimination in commercial properties. Does it apply to residential?
No, commercial.
Commercial only. Please underline or circle commercial properties because ADA is strictly for commercial. That's one of the answers right there.
It is
I know. I told you I was going to give you the 3 answers.
commercial.
Ready for the next one? All right. Skip a paragraph. It says to protect owners of existing structures For the massive expense of excessive remodeling, the ADA recommends, please highlight, underline, put stars, whatever you want, reasonably achievable accommodations to provide access to the facilities and services. So the question is, he's already saying yes, that's another question. The question is, this building right here, if it didn't have an elevator, all the units are up here, right? There's only one storefront, everything else is up here. There's somebody in a wheelchair, but there's no elevator. How do they get up here? They can't. Can they sue the owner?
Yes,
Why?
because it's a commercial building.
Is it reasonably achievable to install an elevator?
Depends on the building.
Is it reasonably achievable? No. See, when it's a new structure, you have different standards. So for new structures, they have different standards. You should already include, just like was included here, an elevator. But if it's an older structure, the cost of implementing an elevator is so high that it's not reasonably achievable.
Okay.
So the thing about reasonably achievable is that it's at low cost. It's not gonna take somebody bankrupt to get it done. So can somebody sue? Sure. It's a waste of time for everybody. That's all it is. Because the landlord's not required to do something that of that great extent. Okay? Was that on the exam?
I thought like it. Oh yeah, it's there.
Okay. Next paragraph, it says existing barriers must be removed when this can be accomplished in a readily achievable manner. And that is with little difficulty and at low cost. The thing that I was just saying right now. Okay? Putting an elevator, is that difficult? Yeah. So definitely already disqualifies. Is it low cost?
No.
So disqualified again. So some of the examples here, and this is the part that's going to be on probable answer. Ramping or removing an obstacle from an otherwise accessible entrance. Lowering well-mounted public telephones. Adding raised letters and braille markings on elevator buttons. Installing auditory signals on elevators. Reversing the direction in which the doors open. And also, handicap parking spaces for people with disabilities can be set aside where appropriate. Unless you're a ShopRite. Was that a potential answer? Do you remember?
No.
You don't remember, or was not?
No, that wasn't a potential.
Okay. How about on the next page? It says, installing a cup dispenser at a water fountain that is too high for an individual in a wheelchair may be more practical than installing a lower unit. Water fountain, instead of putting a lower unit, it's a lot cheaper to put the cup dispenser lower, because the water fountain you can still reach even if you're in a wheelchair, versus removing that unit and putting a lower unit.
No.
No? Okay.
No.
So that was one, just in case. Rental referral services. You guys remember this? Have you ever heard of this, rental referral services? Okay, great, because it was the very last thing on chapter 1. It was the last paragraph on chapter 1, rental referral agencies. And it says, every person working in the rental referral agency who for a fee refers prospective tenants to rental units is required to have a written contract with every prospective tenant. This contract must specify such things as services to be performed, fees charged, date and term of the contract, and the refund policy. And it was exactly in these words. You don't remember.
It was referral agency. But this is rental referral agency.
You want to go back to chapter 1?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a question on test.
Right above rental control, it says units that are advertised must be checked every day to see if they're still available. Units that are simply listed must be checked every 3 days. What's the difference between advertisement and listing? I explained this earlier too, in a different chapter. Advertised or listed? What's the difference?
Oh, that's where we are.
Say it again.
Newspapers.
Newspapers, for instance. So classifies ad, that's an advertisement. Flyers, posters, social media,
Facebook.
your company website, right? And then there's listed MLS. Okay, so if it's simply advertised, it says right there, I'm sorry, if it's advertised, you got to check it every day. If it's simply listed, every 3 days. Because listed, usually we're the ones that have access. Most people don't go to the public MLS. Okay. Next, we have rent control. Have you ever heard of rent control before?
Yes.
You open your mouth, now say it. What is it?
Or the rent can't be increased. It can only be increased a certain amount per year.
Great. So part of rent control, one of the things is the rental increase, right? Allie, was you there telling me that somebody raised $300 rents?
Yeah, my neighbor.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yes,
Your neighbor, right?
yes.
Do you think that's fair?
Mm.
You increase your rent from, like, say, $1,000 to $1,300?
I don't think it's fair because I don't know what was the system, over here in New Jersey, what percent, you can
Right.
increase every year.
And I'm glad you said New Jersey, because it's actually individual communities. See, every township has their own rules. New Jersey has no rules regarding rent control.
Mm.
New Jersey says, as long as it's fair, increases, right? There's nothing set in stone that says this is what you gotta be. But individual communities set their own rent control. So if you go to the city of Newark, it tells you 1%. If you go to the city of Elizabeth, it says another percentage. Some don't say anything, right? Like Livingston, remember?
Remember?
You remember very well, right? Livingston, it happened. It's just fair and honest, fair increases or whatever it was. That's it. And then it's up to the judge to say, well, those $300 or $500, whatever, it's fair. But in municipalities like Newark, it's rent controlled. You got it? So you can only increase 3.5% as an example.
3.5%.
No, don't write it down. I'm just giving you an example.
Mhm.
3.5%, for example. Some of them say it's 3.5% or CLI, whichever is less. CLI is the cost of living index. So if the cost of living was 2.5, the increase, then that's the most that you can charge. If it was 5, then you go with the 3.5%. And then there's another ruling. Every township that has rent control has something towards 4 families and above. So you got to see what the rent control is for those. I don't know where this person lives, if it's a 2-family, 3-family, and so on. But those are things you got to figure out before claiming. Now, if there's an unfair increase, you can go to your municipality, put a complaint, take care of that right away.
Okay.
Usually, especially in Newark, that part they don't play games with. You're not going to have a happy landlord, but you can go there and complain about it.
Yeah, the
Okay.
problem, in her case, she's not gonna do anything because she's afraid of to be evicted. Yeah.
Well, it's not going to be a good relationship after, yeah.
Yeah.
But at least she's protected for another month or so.
Yeah, but she got a kid. I think she's a single mother or something like that.
They cannot evict because of that. They're going to have to find a different excuse.
Oh yeah.
And now comes a lawsuit. No. She can get into a lawsuit against the landlord
Yeah.
because the landlord is evicting because of a potential complaint.
Yeah, but she.
All right, eviction. Okay. Eviction.
Okay.
A landlord may not evict a tenant without court ruling. You guys already know this. In cases of hardship, the court may allow a tenant as long as 6 months to find other accommodations.
No, I think we should get it,
She doesn't want to fight for that.
Yeah.
I already said that, didn't I?
Let's do it tomorrow.
You want to talk with the old lady?
Let him talk.
You gotta charge more.
I'm like Allstate. You're in good hands. You heard the voice?
Very
You're in
good.
good hands.
You saw that joke he sent you about that?
Yeah. Jesus.
Okay.
You guys remember condo in co-ops?
Yeah.
Remember that? You remember condo conversion? You go from apartment building to condos, so individual units?
Mhm.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just yes me to death. I'll go with it. So here's the thing. Landlords may not evict a tenant because if the tenant made a complaint to a government agency. Start with that, Allie. Cannot be evicted because of a complaint. Let's start with that.
Okay.
Okay, so she doesn't have to be afraid. But then when the property is being converted to a condo or co-op, certain tenants are protected. And these are 62 or older or with disabilities that have an income no higher than 3 times their per capita income or no more than $50,000. And if they meet these specifications, these qualifications, they're entitled to stay there for up to 40 years.
Wow.
Yes. So here's the thing. You guys come up with a disability. You're not 62, so disability, you've been there for more than 2
Well, she's
years.
talking about coke and shooting. I don't know.
I don't know.
That sounds like a disability.
The coke and the shooting? I don't know.
This totally, you guys mixing everything up, okay?
That's
That was
a
different
shooting.
story. But the Coco was in another chapter.
She's,
You know, the shooting
she's
was
starting to get
today.
scared already.
Sorry, I get scared. Did you hear? Did you hear what I said in the beginning? Don't feed me info. My students suffer with me. Sorry.
Yeah. And my
Did you hear me
The
mess with
worst
him? The what was it? Estate of years?
Estate of, but it's four.
Four.
5,
4,
6.
3.
Constructive eviction.
okay.
Constructive eviction. You're gonna write in front of constructive eviction. You're gonna write you evict yourself. You evict yourself. Now you're probably thinking like, what do you mean I'm gonna evict myself, right?
I don't like the way I do myself, so kick myself out.
Kick yourself out. But what do you think that is? Why would you evict yourself?
When
First of all, what's an eviction?
removing something, removing.
So removing yourself from the property, that's all it is. You're either being removed by the landlord or you're removing yourself. Either way, you're breaking the lease. But if you're evicting yourself, you're trying to break the lease legally or lawfully, right? So why would you try to get away from a lease? Without reading, Allie.
No, I just.
If you're asking for repairs and they're not met, or.
Right,
you know.
exactly. So, it's highlighted. If a landlord fails to provide such basic services necessary for human habitation, such as heat, electricity, or water, and the premises become uninhabitable, a tenant may claim constructive eviction, move out, and cease paying rent. So if the landlord's not fixing stuff, not only do you have the right to fix it yourself, like we spoke about that earlier, fix it yourself and deduct from rent, but you also have the right, if it's uninhabitable, you have the right to just get out. That's a constructive eviction. But to be constructive, that means you got to give notice to the landlord. So the tenant must vacate the property before claiming constructive eviction. So you leave and you send them a notice. Hey, I left because of this.
Blah, blah.
Now, we are salespeople, right?
Yes.
Should we be giving information about this stuff?
We can, yeah, whatever.
We can give information, but now can we give advice?
No,
No,
Why not?
not my
because
monkey.
then
I'm sorry, it's true.
Because of what?
conflict of interest, basically.
Conflict of interest?
Yeah, because.
No, it's unlawful practice of law.
Because you're not.
You're not an
You're not a lawyer.
attorney. These
No,
are
sure.
that would be legal advice, and you have to.
Be a lawyer to get.
Yeah, well,
A liar.
yeah, liar. So I can quote a few rules, federal rules that say you don't have to, but for all purposes here, we're gonna keep it for state exam, not federal. But for all purposes here, yes, you have to be a lawyer in order to give legal advice. So if asked for advice in such a case, a licensee should always recommend that the tenant consult an attorney first. Okay? Or Rule 17, next friend. Which doesn't
Why
matter.
is there Rule 17 what?
That's federal.
Oh.
Anyway, suit for possession or actual eviction. This is the one that we know about. Everybody knows this one. Is the landlord kicking you out for a reason. So I want you to just focus on the last sentence there. The summary proceeding, which is the whole case, is often called a dispossessed proceeding. You guys remember when I said that if you're in possession of the property, that's 9/10 of the law? So dispossess means you're asking the judge, hey, remove them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're no longer in possession. So it's called dispossessed proceeding.
Can you say it again, like the word dispossession proceeding? I'm sorry.
That was good with the
Singing.
music right now.
Yeah, he was singing.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go then. Yay,
Just go.
what party?
I got the light. Dispossessed proceeding is somebody's in
Possession. I'm
pos-
sorry. I'm a possession. I'm sorry.
You're possessed. That's by the devil. Got it. Singles.
Eagles.
Blush. Go ahead.
Blush.
So dispossessed proceeding, when you're in possession of something, you need to be dispossessed of it, like separated from
Okay.
it. And an eviction is a dispossessed proceeding because they're trying to get you out of the property, out of possession, use and possession of the property. Okay. So Causes for eviction, like I said, the landlord may sue for eviction on the following grounds. Non-payment of rent is one thing. If you don't pay rent, obviously I can kick you out. And it says notice to quit need not be given before the suit is filed. So if it's for non-payment, I don't have to give you notice. I just go straight to court. When do you have to pay the rent?
The first.
First month, unless otherwise stated in the contract.
Unless otherwise stated in the contract, or
If you're 62 years or no?
65.
nope.
No, you're collecting Social Security, disability.
Or any type of government assistance.
Social Security, disability,
What are you trying to-
government assistance. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He walks in.
You know
Anyway,
what I meant.
so those must be given 5 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no notice. If it's the end of the first business day and you don't pay, straight to court. Tenants disorderly conduct. So if you're loud, then I got to give you 3 days notice before the suit may be filed, and so on. So there's different causes, there's different rules. Oh, thought you were going to say something. On the right-hand side at the bottom, this is for Anthony. Certain cases of conviction for a drug-related offense, you can be evicted, okay? No, this is for you to know to stop her with a Coke.
Cola.
There you go. So at the bottom, the very last thing, New Jersey Anti-Eviction Act provides, with only a few exceptions, that tenants who are current with their rent payments may not be evicted solely on the grounds of foreclosure. And this is true whether or not the tenant has a written lease. You guys remember the fact that if you change landlords, if the house is sold, the new landlord must comply with the lease that you have?
Yes.
That means if you have 3 months left or 6 months left or a year left, and it's like $1,500 a month, they cannot raise, they cannot evict you, they cannot do anything as long as you're paying.
Mm-hmm.
Foreclosure is a change of ownership. It's the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So same rules. You cannot be evicted because they bought it at auction. They do this all the time, but you can't.
Question. Now they put it in auction.
Who
I
says you're
had,
entitled to questions?
I had a deposit in there. Who's gonna pay me? How are we gonna be entitled to the deposit? Who's the deposit?
Sucks for you, yeah. Go get your attorney to try to sue the previous landlord for that
For
money.
the auction.
See, the bank is not responsible for that.
He might be close to
The
Ivory by
next,
then.
you're gonna have more money just to sue the guy, just to get
Okay.
him.
Exactly, and these are things we we're talking about before. See, I bought the property, I'm not required to give you the deposit because I was never given the deposit. I only have to give you whatever I received.
Yep.
Simple. Quid pro quo.
That's it.
That's it. Types of leases. There's different types of leases. The very first one is gross lease. You can write there residential because that's what most residential leases are. They're gross, meaning you pay something and the landlord is responsible for all the charges, property charges, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and so on. Okay?
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a question about, what do you call it, leases test.
There should be. There's actually 4 questions about leases on the test. Hopefully one of them is this. Yeah.
Specifically, there's percentage, net, and for commercial purposes.
Yeah, what's the difference between them? Type of thing.
No, more along the lines, which is better for a business, to optimize.
Which is most applicable, maybe, or
It's just for the business to what do you call it? Receives the most amount of profit, which is more profitable for a business.
for business.
Yeah, is it based off the percentage or the?
So it depends,
No, that's what I'm saying.
because I can tell a few businesses with percentage lease that went bankrupt.
Yeah. No, that's the question.
I don't know, you have to read the whole thing. Yeah. But anyway, so we have net lease. What's the difference between gross and net?
Gross is a set amount. Net is what you take. Like-
So it's like your paycheck.
Yeah.
Gross is what you'd like to have, and net is what you take home, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Gross.
So after deductions.
Right.
After deductions. In this case, net lease is, there's a base amount for the landlord, right? That's what you have to pay the landlord. But the landlord makes you responsible for those deductions, which is taxes, insurance, and maintenance. You got it?
Mhm.
So in the gross lease, landlord would like to keep the whole $1,500, but they have to pay the deductions, and they get the net after. A net lease, we're telling you right away, the least amount of money that I'll take is $1,500. And you got to pay taxes, and you got to pay insurance, and you got to pay maintenance.
Water.
Got it? So right at the bottom says, with a triple net lease, the tenant pays taxes, insurance, and all other expenses except Debt services. Where it says debt services, I want you to circle, and you're gonna write mortgage or any other financial claim against the building.
That's a question on test.
Mortgage or any other financial claim against the building.
Put test.
That's what I was gonna say. Test.
Yeah, test. It's in on like
It's in the line.
yeah.
No, but I know it's
Yeah.
it's a question. These why the ones in green, and if you notice, most of the questions you've had so far are the ones that I have. Well, you don't see the green, but here it is. But in yours, it's the only thing that's highlighted is the green parts. And most of the questions that you had so far, they say on the test.
Yeah, they're green.
I know. See the yellows, which you cannot see, but in the email I sent you.
Green.
But the yellows I emailed to you guys, the book. The yellows
I
is
have that on. Sorry.
so the yellows is what's most likely to have I'm sorry, they have appeared in different exams. The greens are the ones that were definitely in the most recent exams. You got it?
Mhm.
At least that I took. Okay?
Mhm.
Or confirmed by the person that says nothing was there, and then all of a sudden,
They're all
oh,
there.
that was there. That was there. Wait, the whole book was there. Shingle. All right.
I'm blushing.
I can tell. All right, percentage lease. What is a percentage lease? It's exactly the same thing as a net lease, but with a twist. The twist is, hey, it's a base lease of $1,000, but then I want a percentage of your gross profit.
Sounds like a mafia boss.
Yep. So if you make $30,000 a month, this month, right? You make $30,000 this month. I want 5% of that on top of the lease. You got it? That's why it's called percentage lease. You have a base pay plus a percentage. Almost like a base salary and commission when you work for somebody. Okay, so the more you sell,
The more money they want.
the more, yeah. Simple.
I know somebody that has that.
Yeah.
I would never want that.
There's I forgot the name of the restaurant. There's a restaurant in Hoboken, Weehawken. They've been trying to sell. They have, they still have, I think it's 17 years left. Well, right now it's probably 15 years left on the lease, but it's at 20%.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a restaurant. So the profit, they have to sell so much in order to meet those margins.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And that's why it's for sale. And nobody wants to pick it up because it's impossible. So the lease should be amended. All right, there's other types of leases. We have variable leases. As the name says, they vary. So prices could increase or decrease depending on how they're structured, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we have ground lease. A ground lease, it says when the landowner leases his or her land to a tenant who agrees to erect a building on it. The lease is referred to as a ground lease. Please highlight or put stars or put bubbles, whatever you want to put. Such a lease must be for a long enough term to make the transaction desirable to the tenant making investment in the building. Because think about it. A ground lease is a terra lease, meaning we're leasing the land only, the ground only. And you find these in strip malls, in the shopping centers, gas stations, pharmacies. Usually what they do is they rent, they don't own. So if you go to a Rite Aid, Walgreens, or anything like that, they're not the owners of the building. They rent the land and they build on it. Now they rented the land, possibly for 50 years, as it says there, or even 1,000 years. These are long-term land rentals or ground rentals, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I did a 1-year ground lease, right, and I'm going to put a building there that costs $13 million, is it worth it for me?
No.
Nope.
No. That's why the leases should be for a long enough term to make it desirable. Now, what do you think could happen? So the last sentence there. What do you think could happen if lease ends? There's a building on it, but the landlord does not want it. Can the landlord ask for it to be taken down?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, it's my property. I'm going to ask you to take it down. But why would I, the landlord, ask you to take it down?
You're the one that put it up.
Say it again?
Because it's your money, basically.
Because
your
it's my
loss.
money. No.
I mean-
How is it my loss?
Well,
Hold on that thought for a second. How is it my loss?
if it's not your loss, if you're choosing to have it taken down, but
Okay. So I rented land to you. You put a building on it. 20 years later, your lease ends. I don't want your building there. Why would I say tear it down? Why would I not keep the building because it's already a built structure that's useful for another person or company?
because maybe it's something else that you're going to lease it to.
Well, that's not my problem. Somebody else could.
That's not how you, what do you call it? That's not how you leased, when you leased it, you want it to revert back to the condition
Yeah,
it was in.
It says here, whether it reverts to the property owner or the tenant is responsible for demolishing it. So that could be a lease term. I can say, hey, don't worry about it, or tear it down. The question is, why would I, in my right state of mind, ask you to tear down the building that costs $13 million to build?
If he make money with the building, buying the.
I could possibly make money with a building, but it's very
Not
simple.
making
But-
an agreement or contract that, he's gonna, keep, the building over there, but, he's gonna.
Oh, no, the building's mine because it's on my land.
Oh, yeah?
Your lease expired, you're out.
Oh, so,
The question is, why would I ask you to tear down the building versus allow it
Oh,
to
yeah.
be there? Because if there's a building, isn't it worth more?
mm-hmm,
Yes.
So
If it's
maybe
worth
it's
more
yes.
and I cannot rent it to anybody else, am I not paying more taxes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the problem. And if you guys haven't noticed, commercial buildings, they could stay vacant for years.
Mhm.
So now I went from paying $10,000 a year in taxes to paying $60,000, $70,000 a year in taxes for a vacant building
On top of maintenance.
on top of maintenance, winterization, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's not a question, it's just for you to exercise a little bit here, which is taxes. If there's a building on it, you have to pay more taxes. If it's just land, you pay less taxes.
Less maintenance too.
All right, next page, it's the last thing, is property management.
Just having a question about property management.
I was gonna skip that.
Oh, don't skip it, man.
I was gonna skip that.
General agents. That's specifically on test.
See, that was from a different chapter, that was chapter 3. But we speak about it here again. So what is a property manager? If you go to functions of the property manager, it says in the simplest terms, a property manager is someone who preserves the value of an investment property while generating income as an agent for the owners. A property manager is expected to merchandise the property and control operating expenses so as to maximize income. And a property manager chooses the best possible means to carry out an agent's responsibilities and has more authority and discretion than an employee. A manager should maintain and modernize the property to preserve and enhance the owner's capital investment. The manager carries out these objectives by securing suitable tenants, collecting rents, caring for the premises, budgeting and controlling expenses, hiring supervising employees, and keeping periodic accounts and making periodic reports to the owner. So that's summarized. We're going to go in detail in a second. What's the first thing you got to have when you go into property management? Just like anything else.
Certification.
A license? You don't need a license to be a property manager.
Certification.
Certification? You don't need one to be a property manager.
Experience.
You might not need one to be one. It all depends on who you can, I was going to say something else.
Property
Who you
to
can
manage.
fool. You know, but the person that owns
Somebody,
it.
yeah.
The first thing you ask for is a management agreement. I asked you that and you were the first one to answer. You want to know how much you get paid, right?
Yes.
In the previous chapter. Here it's the same thing. You have to have a management agreement. If I'm going to work on your properties, I got to know exactly what I'm going to do. So, on the right-hand side on top, it says, a property manager is usually considered, state exam question, you said?
Mm-hmm.
General agent. Is it in green? I mean, in your case,
Yeah.
marked?
It's shaded darker.
Shaded darker, right?
It's not green.
Test. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Whereas most real estate brokers function as special agents, and of course, the property manager is charged with the same fundamental responsibilities of agency, which is cold, care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. Does anybody remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
You got it? Now, this management agreement that we just talked about should be in writing, and it should cover the following points. Description of the property. Very simple. There's 2 buildings right here. This one, the one next door. And that's a separate building too, actually. So which one am I managing? Is it this one, that one, or that one? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it should describe the property I'm going to manage. How long am I going to manage? What are my responsibilities? My duties should be there. My authority as an agent for you, like what can I do for you, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, right? Reporting, the next bullet point. How often should I report to you of all the occurrences, finances, and all that? The only thing that matters, which is the management fee, how much I'm going to get paid. And lastly, allocations of costs. How should I budget? So that's what we're going to start with, budgeting expenses. Where it says operating expenses, I want you to write fixed. Because operating expenses are fixed expenses. Those are the expenses that we have every day, or every month, such as utilities. Do utilities disappear after a while?
No.
No, you're always paying for it. If you have employees, you got to pay for them, right, every month. So stuff like that. It's all going to be included in the fixed or operating expenses. That's a cost to operate. Next page, we have capital expenditures. Capital expenditures is like, we need to replace the roof. Now, if it's a 100-unit apartment building, as an example, then the roof could be $50,000, again, as an example. Do we have the money now? We might not. So do we have the money in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Okay, 5 years. We divide that by 5 years, and now we can budget to replace the roof in 5 years. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That means that every month we're going to set aside a portion of the rentals towards that goal, capital expenditures. Got it? Yes? No? Maybe?
Yeah.
Big
Cool.
fixing projects.
Renting the property. It says the role of the manager in managing a property should not be confused with that of a broker who acts as a leasing agent and is solely concerned with renting space. The property manager may use the services of leasing agents, but that agent does not undertake the full responsibility of maintenance and management of the property. So this last sentence right here, I have it highlighted on my end. It's not in green, it's in yellow, and Anthony just told me it's on his test. So there's variables, that's what the yellows are, okay? Here's the thing. There's a property manager, there's a leasing agent. Property manager is somebody that manages the property, leasing agent is somebody that rents. Sometimes it could be the same, as long as they're licensed to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Setting rental rates. Right above it, I want you to write comps. Comparables. Comps. So when you set the rental rates, you got to look at what?
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? What else?
Other rental.
Other
properties.
rentals, comparables.
Yeah.
So you're going to look at other properties, how much they're charging for the rentals, what amenities do they offer,
Mhm.
compared to your property, what amenities you offer, and then you have your rates. So you're going to look at comparables, and that's what I have there marked. Consideration also must be given to prevailing rates in comparable buildings, and the current level of vacancy in the property to be rented, called supply and demand. You guys remember supply and demand?
Yes.
Yep.
You sure? Because we didn't talk about it. That's coming up on chapter 16. Now I got my yes people.
You got me all confused.
I just wanted to know who my yes people were.
You got me all confused.
Imagine 50 people when I do this.
I'm getting tired already.
Like you guys were like looking at each other. Imagine 50 people
I
like.
say nothing because I say I don't remember because it's many things.
Listen.
Yeah.
The supply and demand drives the market.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is, but we didn't talk about it yet.
No. Yes.
Yes. All right. Next, the last paragraph there says, if a high level of vacancy exists, an immediate effort should be made to determine why. A high level of vacancy does not necessarily indicate that the rents are too high. The trouble may be you, the manager. There's more over there. The trouble may be you, the manager. So it says the manager should attempt to identify and correct the problems first rather than immediately lowering the rents. A lot of people assume, oh, there's nobody coming here because the rents are too high. No, they don't want to live there because of how it's being managed. Okay? It says conversely, so on the other hand, a high percentage of occupancy may appear to indicate an effective rental program, but it could also mean that rental rates are too low. Okay? So if it's almost fully occupied, you're being cheap. If there's too much demand, not enough supply, what do? You raise the price. So it says right here, with an apartment house or office building, Anytime the occupancy level exceeds 95%, serious consideration should be given to raising rents. Simple comparison, if you have tickets for a show, for a game, whatever. Usually if you, or actually you know what? To fly, to go on vacation. Should you buy them now for next year? Or should you wait for last minute?
No,
Why?
because they get them cheaper.
Because it's vacant, usually it's cheaper. As you get closer, there's only 1 or 2 spots available, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
Unless you find one of those agencies that buy rights to certain seats, then they have special deals for you, package deals, right, for Punta Cana. That's what you did last time, right? Last minute flight?
3 days before.
And it was cheaper than,
I scared,
I'm gonna do that soon.
I book it Monday to leave on Thursday.
No, I like to search. I
Ah, me
search
too.
for everything.
No, but it was cheaper than the last time you went.
Too.
All right, on the right-hand side on top, tenant selection.
Sometimes I have that moment things I have to go, it doesn't matter what, so.
Sometimes like 5 times a day.
I don't go on vacation 5 times a day. Man.
No, but you have that sudden thing.
Oh, that's, yeah. I just control myself.
Monday through Friday.
5 times a day. Anyway, tenant selection. Says generally high rents can be secured from satisfied tenants, and a broker may sell a property and then have no further dealings with a purchaser, whereas a building manager's success depends on retaining sound, long-term relationships. So when we sell a house, it doesn't, you might not have another sale for a very long time. But property management, you need to keep relationship with your tenants. Keep them satisfied, and they'll stay there for a long time. Collecting rents, if you want to avoid problems or minimize problems, the second sentence there says that a property manager should investigate financial references given by the prospect, local credit bureaus, and when possible, the prospective tenant's former landlord. That means I got to verify all the information on your application, including calling your previous landlord, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if everything matches,
Then you're good.
Yeah.
Except for that one story I saw on ABC, 60 Minutes.
is it going to take 60 minutes? Because it's like
No.
it's 10:07.
Nope.
Go ahead. What's the story?
Nope, too late.
It was on 6. I'm sorry, man. I'm just messing with you.
It was a 60-second story.
You didn't even finish.
No, where everything checked out. The people who were gonna rent it out.
Talk.
The people that were gonna rent it out, they checked out every single one of these boxes, and then they showed up, and then they were the opposite of what
Nice.
they had checked out.
Just like a resume.
Mm-hmm.
You know when I used to, and that's how I sat down with Paul the first time to train him, to work with us. When I used to ask for resumes, I don't care about the paper. But when I'm asking you questions, looking in your eyes and going through everything you have, then I can tell if you're that person or somebody else, if I should hire or not. Because resumes, I mean, there's a bunch of them on the internet.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm a brain surgeon, just saying.
All right.
I kind of am, that's what I'm doing right
You'll
now.
operate next
I can
week.
say my title is brain surgery. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hiring employees versus contracting for services. The right-hand side on the bottom. What do you think we should do? If it's a 100-unit apartment building, what do you think the most common problems are going to be with that building? 100 units, apartment building. Most common problems.
Garbage. Trash.
Stop talking about tenants like that. Next.
Light bulb.
Wow, people.
Light bulbs?
Yeah.
No.
Cockroaches.
It's not a Peruvian community. Next.
Collecting the rent from everybody.
Really? 100-unit apartment building, the most common problem is going to be plumbing.
Sewage.
Sewage, plumbing, right?
Waste. Feces.
Let's stick to plumbing, pieces aside. Now, if the most common problem is plumbing in 100 units, do you think the problems they're going to have are going to be on a yearly basis, quarterly basis, monthly basis, weekly basis, or daily basis?
Monthly.
It could be daily
It
basis.
could be daily basis, yeah.
On 100 units.
Most likely daily basis, because whatever starts up top will clog all the way down. Well, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like, for instance, hair. I didn't mean like what he said. She's like, I'll never rent the bottom floor again.
No way.
All right. So most likely plumbing. Now, if it's a daily problem, does anybody know how much it costs for a plumber to come out?
Depends. If you have
Of course it depends, but an average?
like 200, 300, 400.
Oh my god.
Keep going.
Well, it depends.
100, 600.
If you
Who
have
gets more? Who
family
gets more?
members, is it emergency or, you know, it's like they.
It depends.
Like, you know.
Depends if it's
right now.
emergency or not, but
Yeah.
on average, we're talking about $300 to $350 just to come out and include pay hour or two, and they start charging from the moment they left the shop and the moment they have to go back to the shop, right? So let's say 300. If it's a daily problem, how many days do we have in the year? Anthony, don't answer. Say again?
365 days in a year.
365. Okay, we could be.
I mean, every
Him and
4
Matthew.
years we have one day more, so.
So 300. You gonna check the calendar?
No. Sorry.
Oh, so $300 versus 365 days.
That's
Wow.
a lot of work.
That's a lot of money. Should you contract for services on a daily basis, or should you have a superintendent who happens to be a plumber,
Superintendent.
right? So you give them a salary, and you might even throw an apartment. Hey, you live right here. I'll give you, you know, $80,000 a year, and I'm still saving money.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what a
All
lot of them do.
So what if it's a two-family? Should I have a superintendent?
No.
No, because I'm not going to have problems like that. And that's what's highlighted right there. This decision should be based on a number of factors, including size of the building, complexity of the tenant's requirements, and availability of suitable labor. You're also responsible for insurance. Just go to the next page. And it says management field. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Second sentence there. It says the Institute of Real Estate Management was founded in 1933 and is part of the National Association of Realtors. Members may earn the designation of Certified Property Manager. And the Building Owners and Managers Association International is a federation of local associations of owners and managers, primarily of office buildings. What you need to know is that participation in groups like these allows property managers to gain valuable professional knowledge and to discuss their problems with other managers facing similar issues. So the reason why you want to be part of memberships, like we are part of the National Association of Realtors, right? You're going to have training, designations, all that, and usually events where you get to discuss our problems. What's failing for you, what's working for you, and so on. We share these ideals, okay?
Mhm.
In this case, it's for property managers. And the last thing is right above summary says the Community Association Institute. Do you see it? CAI is a nonprofit organization founded in 1974 to research and distribute information on association living and offers training and designation for specialized management. The end.
Yay.
On the test.
Kai.
Yeah.
It's on the test, Kai?
On the test, yeah. That's why I told you, like, property management.
Here it's in yellow. It's the same.
Kai is on test. Why don't we put that on Kai?
Just stand up.